Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of this Expat Life. My name is Amanda Maxime and today I'm joined in the digital studio by Nathalie van Haaren. Nathalie grew up as a child to diplomats and she has lived and studied abroad in the Netherlands, but also in London and in Senegal. She left a corporate career in IT after experiencing burnout to become a freelance consultant and trainer. And she currently has a private international coaching practice for women who are navigating life and career transitions. And in addition, she's also a breathwork facilitator and she hosts retreats. And she's currently living with her partner in Dakar, Senegal. Welcome, Nathalie.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Amanda. Nice to be here.
Yes, I'm happy that you are here as well. Are you calling in from Senegal as well now?
Yes. So I'm currently in my new apartment. We recently moved within Dakar, Senegal. And for those who are wondering where exactly is that, I live on the most west coast peninsula part, so the most western point in Africa, actually. And I share this because initially when I moved here, I didn't know exactly where I was going.
Okay, so why don't we dive into it right away? Could you maybe share how you ended up there?
Yeah. So we need to go back to 2019, where I was recently together with my now husband, back then boyfriend. And we were living a life in the Netherlands. So we were both living in Amsterdam. We both held corporate careers there. And secretly, we also both held a desire to question a little bit of the status quo and say, okay, is this the route that we're going to take to, do what's expected of us and then buy a house and then move to the suburbs, and kind of, it felt a little bit like a predictable path. And then we discovered that we both have this very big shared value of adventure and both held a dream to become entrepreneurs one day, but at that time we didn't know exactly how and what. And it was about 2 months after the first biggest trip that we did together that he came back and he received a call from his current business partner and friend to say, I have an idea. I would like to start a business in Senegal. And it kind of turned our life upside down because it meant it meant a couple of things.
Yeah. So how shortly after receiving that phone call did you guys move to Senegal?
So initially, because, I still held a job at the time and we had zero information whether, it was going to work. He had never been, I had never been. I mean, the closest I was in Western Africa was Ghana. But initially I said, okay, well, it makes sense that you go there and you feel, do I like the country? Does it make sense for me to, quit my job and start this adventure? And he came back and he said, okay, I really liked it. And of course I already felt it coming. And I was like, okay, this is something that he's going to say yes to. And at that time I didn't feel ready at all to move. So 4 or 5 months after, he packed up his things. We had moved in together by that time, and we started a long distance relationship.
Oh, wow. And how long then did it take you to follow him and go to Senegal as well?
So initially we had agreed that I would come in a year from then, so September 19 to 2022. Yeah. And it took me a little bit longer.
Oh, how come?
So I think that I really started to question, if I make this move and I pack up my things here, my life here, my career here. So at that time I was still working for a big corporation, having recovered from burnout, but going back to work. I thought, this is a lot to give up for a man I love without zero guarantees that I'm gonna like it. And by that time, of course, I had come to visit, and Senegal is a very warm, welcoming place. Initially, I didn't speak the language that much because they speak French and Wolof here. And yeah, it took me 6 months more
Mm-hmm.
than initially we had agreed. And I think navigating personally that space of choosing for somebody fully,
Mm-hmm.
um, not having the guarantees of anything, whilst knowing that it's going to impact both your career, your social circle. At that time, I was not clear on what I wanted to do yet. So I,
Yeah.
by then, changed already to become a freelancer so that I could feel a little bit more open to receive new opportunities and work from anywhere. So that was already like the first tiny part that I started doing.
Yeah.
But still, it felt really, really overwhelming. That despite the fact that I love him, of course, to decide to follow him.
Yeah, exactly. How important is it for you in life in general to have guarantees?
I mean, I I think consciously, like we want to be so in control of being able to plan our lives in a way
Mm-hmm.
that we know exactly what the next step is. So I think it's a very normal desire to
Mm-hmm.
want that and have that sense and feeling of control. Yet when I look back in my life and some of the decisions that I've taken where I felt, the most alive or that felt the most aligned, I didn't necessarily have those guarantees.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how it's going to work out on multiple levels. Like even on a relationship level, like if I look at, we had only lived together for 2 months and then I moved here and here we really had to start living together.
Yeah.
Like that in itself, I had no idea how that was going to work out for us.
Yeah. I can imagine like it's scary, right? You're moving to another country, you're moving in for the first time, you're giving up many of your securities, and you get no guarantees in return. It's just a one big adventure. So what helps you to surrender to it and to go for it besides taking those little steps like freelancing and things?
Yeah. Um, I think what was very important for me during the journey was to trust my partner and also at the same time share everything that I was feeling or going through. So to give you a very personal example, there was a part of me that wanted to get married before moving. Because that's what like in turn when I internalized it, I was like, oh, I'm giving up everything for someone. Like I want some sort of guarantee. And I think in the beginning that put a lot of pressure on the relationship because we
Yeah.
had always been together, I think by then like maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And well, you know that I'm also a coach. I started to explore like what is this story about? And then I realized that my parents had a similar union
Mm.
for my mother. So my mother is Ecuadorian, my father is Dutch, and my mother gave up her career to come to the Netherlands, and they did that by getting married.
Yeah.
Once I sort of realized this, oh, okay, like this is the model that was shown to me.
Yeah.
So therefore, there's a part of me that probably also wants that, and it took a little bit of time for me to realize that, but also very raw and honest conversations with my now husband. So we did end up getting married, but to realize that most of our patterns and things that we want in life are not per se our fullest truth, but
Mm-hmm.
they're also stories that we have learned and conditioning that we have been passed on to like by our parents and the role models that we have in our life.
Absolutely. This is beautiful. It gave me goosebumps actually when you spoke about this, when you spoke about your mom and how that was the model for you.
Mm.
And I'm also trained in systemic work. So right away I thought, okay, that's part of your system then, this longing for guarantees or something in return because you're giving up everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's beautiful. And thank you for being so open and for sharing about this because I'm sure more people, more women, men also are struggling with this. So this is really good. Um, I know you a little bit because we follow each other on Instagram. We have a lot of things in common. We both studied in London. We are both coaches, breathwork facilitators, although I'm not active in that field anymore. We actually were in the Azores at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah, we have friends.
My honeymoon and during your trip.
Yeah, exactly. We have friends and contacts in common. So every time I find something new, then I'm like, oh yeah, Natalie has that too. It's really funny. And I think another thing that we really share is that we're highly independent and very ambitious. And there's one big difference between us. We are both living abroad, but you went for your husband and I went here alone. Can you maybe share for every other ambitious woman or man who has moved abroad for love, what you did and what it took for you to embrace that part of you as maybe perhaps even a new identity? How did you settle into this? Okay, I'm here for someone else. And how did it affect your ambition and your independence?
Yeah. So I can't talk about this topic without also honoring the struggles that come with this.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are in a situation where one of you, whether it's your wife leaving or girlfriend leaving, and the man is following, or the other way around, I think if I look at my surroundings, and most commonly also maybe in expat world, it's more often that the woman follows the man still. Even though I have a few examples where it's the opposite, but it touches many, many layers of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
of the narrative. I consider myself a little bit of a feminist as well. So,
Yeah.
holding my truth in the sense that I'm highly independent and I can take care of ourselves. In the beginning, I had to let go, for example, of some of the financial security, of leaning on him, of feeling that super, almost like yucky feeling that I was like, I don't want this.
Yeah.
And it was like that in the beginning. Quite quickly, I managed to, start a different career. But I think that your ability to lean on your partnership, because it's a decision in the end that you make together, is super, super important to do in the beginning. Because he also or she also wants you to be successful in a way. And I think when you adopt also the perspective of your partner, that he or she is willing to see you thrive. So therefore, it makes so much sense that, I think in the finance aspect, that we can lean on a certain partner and not make it mean anything about our self-worth.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So the people, mostly women that I coach, and also looking at my own life, I think what my coachees and I have sometimes in common or had is the inability to lean on someone. They are super self-reliant. They find it very difficult to ask for help. So how were you, I don't know if that rings true for you, but how were you able to lean more on that partnership, like practically as well, or maybe things you told yourself?
Yeah. I think it's very important to realize that if you do move for love and you're going like as a couple, like as a team, you are not going to get all the support that you need from that partnership. And there was, for example, a time in this, especially in the beginning, where you are making new friends, trying to find your bearings, looking at, okay, what are the hobbies that I can do here? And there is a very real emotional roller coaster of like, okay, I'm moving, it's exciting, I'm doing all of these new things, and you're exploring together, you're adventuring together, and it creates this peak in your experience of going to a new place.
Yeah.
And energy carries on for a long time. And then it's very normal to start experiencing a dip. I think I was reading a research paper from expats who expatriates, especially diplomats, where it's normal that after a while, when things start sinking in, that your reality kicks in.
Yeah.
That the things that don't necessarily feel so comfortable make you feel like, or question even, why did I do this? And there were many things that I could lean on for my partner. So there were a few months where I experienced like I was not being my best self, like my energy started dripping. I had different kind of thoughts. It was a little bit like if the life force was just pulled out of me, and he could not support me in that way. And it took a lot of resourcefulness and self-awareness and acceptance of getting help to decide, you know what? And to change the narrative, like I'm a highly independent woman, so therefore I'm going to give myself what I need.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the second time that I hired a coach. So initially I hired my first coach to transition careers, and then I worked with someone else to say, okay, if I am not living in my highest level of energy and how I want to be thriving, not that we need to be thriving all the time, but I think if people are listening to this, like you can tell if something feels off, or whether it's just, you know, like one week of the month where you just suffer from PMS and then you'll be okay the week after again. And so I hired support, and that was the first thing. And then the second thing is I became very vulnerable with the people that were around me.
Good.
And that was so hard. And I think, and even for myself as a coach, I think I've gotten better and more comfortable sharing also when it doesn't go so well. But really truly opening up creates a level of connection with the people around you that I was so craving, because it was actually this connection and feeling disconnected, especially when you move abroad, feeling like the contacts that you have are fleeting, like they're going away anyways, or you never know how long somebody is going to stay. You might as well just close up your heart again, so don't get hurt. And I noticed that when I did open up to some of the girls that I met here, even, you know, some of the men, that you have the most beautiful connecting conversations where not only do they make you feel seen and heard, they also share that they experience this, they experience the highs and lows. And so, I think that's probably the biggest realization. So one is not to be afraid to ask for help, and almost challenge the narrative of, like, if you do see yourself as a highly independent woman, to take the reins in that sense and say, okay, so we're going to figure this out, and I'm not going to do it alone.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I love that. I really love that. And beautiful also how you can find connection in your vulnerability. And seeing that you're not alone in this also gives you already some support, I think. I can imagine that building your company after moving to Senegal was something also that maybe increased your self-worth again, or at least your confidence in yourself, or that you are on the road of building somewhere there, independent of your relationship. Could you maybe share how, you know, what meant that building part for you?
Let me start here. Like, I think if you move for love, finding a sense of independence and purpose is so important, especially when you make this move, because otherwise you will stay stuck in maybe the phase where, okay, I moved for love, and now what? Like, now I get to maybe blame him for my circumstances if I'm not happy. And I think that's a narrative that happens also quite a lot. And I recognize it as well, to say, like, if it wasn't going so well, I moved here because of you, you know? So how do I get out of this? And this sort of like victim blaming mentality, I mean, it's going to get you somewhere that maybe people are going to pity you, and then that's it. That's where it stops. And then it's really your job to find meaning and purpose in whatever way you can start feeling your joy again. And now I know for many expats, especially if you come as a spouse or partner, it's not always guaranteed that you can work. And so how do you start giving meaning and fulfillment in when you're maybe not even allowed to execute your profession? You know, some people need to give up their job as a lawyer or as a doctor or whatever. These are very specific professions. And my invitation there would be to start seeing, okay, what are things where I can get involved in, like locally, or maybe even do something voluntarily or start a creative project. It's so important to do that because it will be another lifeline to get to feel like you have purpose, to feel like you have a reason to wake up.
Yeah.
And for me, building my business, so I still used to do some consulting on the side. So actually having made that first career step to realize, like, I want to build a career that's much more flexible than what I currently had.
Mm-hmm.
So I started with my old network already. And I think that's something that we can also realize and take away. Like, you have, by the time, if you're listening to this, you're in your 30s, 40s, whatever, you have a network, you have skills, and you can use them in your next position.
Yeah.
You just need to have a little bit of courage
Yeah.
to follow that. And that will be something that gives you purpose and you can work towards. So for me, building my business, it started in parallel. So I was holding a part-time job as a coach, but for my coaching school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the options for remote working are insane. Like, if we compare this to 10 years ago, I mean, there are specific job boards for remote working that you can tap into, look into, if you have certain skills, how can you potentially start a business? And like, you can start very small. Like I remember that in the beginning when I was still navigating a lot, I was literally sitting down and looked at, okay, what is missing in Dakar here at that time? And there were very little delivery, like we don't have Uber Eats, we don't have all of these things. We have a different system, but I missed like healthy food, vegan food. And I'm no longer vegan, but so I started thinking about, okay, how can I create recipes and how can I maybe start selling that from my desire that I already, and from my joy of cooking.
Yeah.
And just thinking about that and just allowing myself to experiment. I mean, it didn't go through in the end, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But giving yourself the challenge to set up like tiny little experiments if you're not sure what to do, to see, okay, what actually brings me energy, and can I follow?
Exactly. I love actually this example because I have a friend who traveled with his partner to Brasilia when we all lived there. And he was also looking for something to do, some meaning in his life. And he also started making super healthy lunches, and he sold them in the street of where our embassies were located. You could just order them. And it was amazing. And not just for him, like, he made so many people happy. So even with these little experiments, like, don't forget the results of your work are also making other people happy. You're bringing value to other people. It's not just about you. Yeah, that's really nice.
And I
Great.
really love that you say that. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's it. Yeah.
I really love that you say that because I think often the narrative, especially in today's society, when it comes to purpose, it's like, you need to find it in yourself. You need to find it in yourself. And then somewhere there's going to be a lock that opens, and then boom, you have it. Whereas if we turn around purpose by saying, how can I make myself useful?
Yeah.
And that already naturally starts including other people.
Yeah.
I think we get that sense of fulfillment a lot quicker than if we only start looking within.
Yes, I agree. Ask yourself, how can I serve? This is like, even as an entrepreneur, I already know, what I'm selling and who I'm selling it to, but I always ask myself, how can I serve even more people, or how can I serve better? So even when I've already found my purpose, I'm still asking myself that question as well. It's a beautiful question to start your day with. I think a lot of people, what they have, and maybe not everyone is aware of it, is that they really tie their identity and their self-worth and their self-esteem to their job or their career. And so when you mentioned like these very specific careers that you can't exercise often in another country, but sometimes you cannot even get a visa to work. So there's like nothing possible. Yeah, I would like to say, or invite them really, to anyone who's listening, to see if you can find your self-esteem, your self-worth not in your doing, but in your being. So it's not so much tied to your career anymore, or your prestigious job, or the results that you get, but really in who you are being. And I think this is a really difficult road, because we in this our Western society are so trained to find our worth in our jobs and the money that we make and the things that we buy. But in essence, I think it's really about who you're being.
I mean, I think you just dropped this little bomb there, because the first thing that comes to mind is like, and I struggled with this too, is like, what do you mean not doing and going
Yeah.
into being?
Yeah.
What does that even look like, that journey?
Yeah.
Right? If you're listening to this and you're like, okay, yeah, I exactly don't know what she's talking about. Well, first of all, I think most of us have been there at one point or another. And if this is the first time that you're hearing like, okay, how can I be more in my being? It's okay that you don't have the answer exactly yet, because it starts with the awareness to see, where have I tied who I am to the
Yeah.
things that I do
Yeah.
and to the money I make.
Yeah.
And this identity part of shifting identities, it's going like, so I coach specifically women, and I think women go through identity changes even more, like just naturally, just by the way we're cyclical beings.
Yeah.
And the rites of passage, what I call them, you know, from maybe girlfriend to wife, and from wife to mother, these are such hectic sometimes transitions in our life, where we have the opportunity to add another part of us to the existing part of who we already are. So yes, you are the things that you achieved in your work, and you have a certain amount of money that you made, and you own probably certain things that you can be proud of. And what else?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you're much more than that. So rather than, I think, you know, making that whole shift, it's about adding more depth to your life.
Yeah, and I also always see this really as like the being feels so inside, it's your core, and then there's an outer layer of doing. And I really learned to be more, to find my identity more in my being. And so now when anything happens in my doing, I don't book the results, or last fall I got really mentally very, very tired of everything. And I took a tiny break. I can now experience that as it's okay. It's just in the outer layer and it's not affecting me in my essence. And so I can imagine, I don't know how it was for you, but if you are in burnout, that you are really frustrated with yourself because you feel like, oh, but I want to do so many things and I'm not producing and not delivering and I'm not performing as well as I used to. And that's not who I am. I think it's really hard to accept that it's not about doing, it's really about being. And I think the more you can sink into the being, this whatever happens in the outer layer, even a move abroad and you can't work, doesn't really affect you so much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, working with your being, that's actually interesting, because we actually don't need to do anything to
Yeah.
just be.
Yeah.
Right. But then I think in the day-to-day, okay, so what does that look like if we were just making it super practical? Like the being might be in that, you know, the moment that the alarm clock goes and you feel like you're actually really tired and need some rest, that you don't push yourself, but
Yeah.
allow yourself to have a slow morning.
Yeah.
Maybe it is that in the doing, whereas, you know, maybe you feel frustrated and you fear like not being able to work, therefore you spend, I don't know, hours and hours and hours searching something on the internet to do, to pause that and to actually use the opportunity to maybe not work for a while.
Yeah.
And explore what that's like.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I think there's a beautiful duality for people to explore, like, okay, so I'm a person that does things, and then what else? What else can I do to kind of like ground myself in who I am?
Yeah. Beautiful. I love this. Thank you for sharing. It is time to wrap up. I really loved this very deep conversation and how open you were, and that we got to the essence of things right away. As always, I ask my guests one question, and maybe you can tie your answer to the topic we just talked about, but you're very welcome to give any answer that you like. But what is your number one hack to make living abroad easier?
So the one thing that I did from the beginning is I brought my own refreshener, like to do my laundry.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody thought that I was crazy for doing that because I had like 5 different bottles in my luggage when I first moved here. And this ties in to just first of all, knowing yourself well and allowing yourself into being, because the sense of smell that had when I wash my clothes makes me feel like I'm home.
Mm.
And especially in that first few weeks, few months, find something that can ground yourself in all of the hectic that is happening, and inviting in things like smells or
Yeah,
foods from home can be so comforting when you're navigating big changes.
yeah.
So I would say something with a sense of smell or maybe taste, something that reminds you and gives you the feeling of home.
Beautiful. So you can create your new home there. Yeah, very nice. Nathalie, thank you so much. If people want to reach out to you or want to know more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram, Natalie_N_power. So that is N and then power, or on my website. I'm sure you'll link it in the show
I'll link
notes.
it. Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.